I guess you clicked on this video because you also want to know books that are just gonna have you kicking your feet, giggling, laughing like a little schoolgirl the whole time. Luckily for you, I have this whole stack of books that had me giggling my whole way through. And I love that feeling whenever you're reading a book and you're just so giddy all throughout. Like, you are just like most of the time with books that have me like kicking my feet giggling, that just means that there is top tier banter. That the two main characters either are enemies to lover and the banter is top tiers, or they're friends to lovers and the banter is still top tier, or they just outright have a crush on each other and the banter is top tier. If you like romance or fantasy, you're in luck. I have both genres in this stack of books. We're going to start off with romance and then I'll give you my fantasy options as well. First, we have Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. This is a 5-star read for me. I love it so much. This is a second chance romance book with Grumpy versus Sunshine. He's grumpy, she's sunshine. He's a florist, she's a wedding planner. And it is. Their dynamic just was so perfect. Not only did this book have me giggling my way throughout it, I also found the main female character to be super relatable, and even the male character reminded me a lot of my husband. If me and my husband were a book trope, we would be Grumpy versus Sunshine for sure. And just some of the characteristics of the main male character in this book reminded me of an actual man, which might give you an ick. I don't know. Next book we have Rise and Fall by AJ Nicole. I ate this book up. This is the second book in the Plain and Pleasure series. There are 3 books in total. However, they can all be read as standalones. You don't have to read the first to read the second. Now, what's interesting about this book is it's an age gap romance, and I typically don't love age gap romances. Matter of fact, most of the time,
I despise them.
Not with this book though. This book had me giddy. It is an age gap romance. He is a single father. The main female character, again, is just so relatable, and she's funny and witty, but she's also going through these real life things and kind of struggling but making her way through. And quite frankly, I think this book doesn't get the hype it deserves. Listen, hear me out on this next book. I'm going to show it to you and you're going to be like, Mercedes, I'm sorry, what? I know. Just hear me out for a second, because we have Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton. And if you're asking yourself, isn't that a suspenseful dark romance? Yes. Yes, it is. Okay, but listen, just for a second. Enzo is this big bad guy who like doesn't have a single care in the world until he meets who does he meet? What's her name? Until he meets Sawyer. And Sawyer was nothing but a wrecking ball in this man's life. It's like they hate each other, but they don't actually really hate each other. They want to convince themselves that they hate each other, but they don't actually really hate each other. This is one of those books that I started at 10 p.m., which was a mistake because I could not stop reading it. Next, I have a series for you. It's the Knockemout series by Lucy Score. This is another 5-star series for me. The first book gets hate, understandably so. The first book is not the best book out of the series. The next 2 books are 5 stars for me. And if it was a damn thing, this would be a 6-star read for me. The last book is my favorite. It's a second chance romance, but also sort of an enemies to lovers romance. And again, it's the tension, the things they say to each other, the underlying love that no one wants to address, but it comes out in the end. This is a series that I would recommend that you have to read all the books in order, because there is an interconnected plot throughout the books. I haven't heard of anyone reading these as standalones, but if you skip the first and second book and read the last book, there's this plot line that will just kind of go over your head. It's kind of sad to end a series that you love so much because you just miss your friends, but then again, they're not real. Next, we have Done and Dusted by Layla Sage. I know there is a second book out to this series. I haven't read it yet, so I can't say if it makes me giddy or not, but this one sure as hell did. This is a cowboy small town romance. We love a strong-willed, independent, hardworking, blue-collar man, don't we, ladies? The tension, the banter, the love story, everything about it. Those are all the romance recommendations that I have. Next, we'll move into some fantasy options. I'll first start with the YA genre, first being Powerless by Lauren Roberts. The second book in the series comes out next month, which I am so excited for. I think I gave this book 4 stars, but I really believe that the next book has real potential to be 5 stars because I know I keep saying the banter, right? That's like kind of the theme of this whole video. But the banter, also the possible love triangle question mark, maybe? I don't know. We have to wait until the next book comes out to really find out. And the love triangle is between 2 brothers and a girl. It is YA, so there is no spice. I don't care about that though, because when the tension is so damn delicious, I don't need no spice. And I know a lot of people say that this book is a knockoff Hunger Games. I can see the comparison. When I read this book, I definitely got Hunger Games vibes, but I also got Throne of Glass vibes as well. I don't think it's a complete knockoff. I think there's a similar premise, but they're different enough to where this is really its own storyline. This is not the Hunger Games retelling in my mind. And one thing that this book has that the Hunger Games didn't is the tension and the banter. Next, we have another 5-star read for me, which is The Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Meyer. The second book is coming out in September, which I'm really excited for. I say this book is like a rom-com meets fantasy meets The Office. It's such an entertaining, fun read. If you're looking for heavy fantasy, don't look here. This is an entertaining, fun read. That literally snuck right up on me. Anyway, it has fantasy aspects to it. It is in a fantasy world, but fantasy is not really the plot. This book is about a girl who needs work desperately, who finds herself the assistant to the local villain, and he is a no-nonsense, grumpy, he doesn't care about anything, but she brings little rays of sunshine, or some would consider a little chaos, into his life. Next, we have another 5-star read, Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Really enjoyed this read. This is part of a duology. The second book is Ruthless Vows. This is 5 stars for me. Ruthless Vows is 4 stars for me. But one thing that stayed consistent throughout both books was Roman and Iris, and boy are they top tier. And this isn't necessarily a book that has top tier banter, but the love story itself is just so sweet and cute, and the things that Roman does for Iris just have you gasping and smiling, and you're so in love with their love story. Roman and Iris are journalists who are working in a period of time of war, but Iris wanted to report more about the war, but the company she was working at was censoring everything. So she ended up going to the front lines of war, and Roman followed her. The next book is probably one of the spicier books out of these recommendations, if not the spiciest. It is a fantasy book, and it is A Fall of Ruin and Wrath by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I always feel like I say her last name wrong. Armentrout. This is the first book in a series. I don't know how many books are going to be in the series. I also don't even know when the second book is going to come out, but I need the second book so bad. Prince Thorn is like this perfect amount of arrogant and cocky, and Callistia is this perfect amount of reserved and shy but eager. I think that makes a perfect duo, and it's a perfect combination for good banter and good tension, and I loved it. Next, we have A Kingdom of Stars and Shadows by Holly Renee. This is a fantasy book, but it's like if a fantasy book was a romance. Does that make sense? It's like it's in a fantasy world. It would do you some good to know fantasy lingo, fantasy words, enjoy fantasy a little bit, but this revolves heavily around the romance. I believe it's a 5-star book series, but the books are quite small. It is an interconnected series, so you do have to read them in order. Sticking on a theme of not too heavy in the fantasy, but is in a fantasy world, we have Viciously Yours by Jamie Applegate Hunter. Ooh, 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 ooh. I love this book. This is the type of book you want to read when you want that intensity of a fae romance, but you don't want to embark on the journey of a whole damn fantasy book. You don't care about the war. You don't care about the politics. You just want the romance. And may I present you Viciously Yours. The man in this book is so over the top. He's so unhinged. Even his mate is like, can we take it down just a notch, sir? This is the first book of the Fae Kings of Eden series. I believe it's going to be 4 books, but the other books haven't been published yet. Last but not least, we have A Fae Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. Love this book so much. This is a Viking romantasy. It will do you some good to know some Norse lore when reading this book. If you don't have any backgrounds to Vikings, I think you will make your way through this book, but you may not enjoy it as much just because it is based on that time period and the lingo used in this book revolves around Viking Norse lore lingo. It was so close to being a 5-star read for me, but the end got a little too jumbled for it to be a full 5-star read. I feel like I'm being petty when I say that. Both the main characters in this story are very strong-willed, very opinionated, and both very much so want to do their own thing. I love Bjorn, but right now we're currently beefing. If you know, you know, you know? The tension, the banter, just like with all the other books, top tier. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. All these books made me giddy, made me happy. The banter, tension, top tier, ate it up, loved every second of it. Have you read any of these books? Do you love any of these books just as much as I do? Or do you have any other recommendations that fit this theme of giddy, good banter, good tension, have you kicking your feet by the end? If you do, feel free to leave it in the comments below. I hope you were able to get some good recommendations out of this video. You should go buy yourself a bouquet of flowers because they are so pretty and so worth it. And what did Miley Cyrus say? I can buy myself flowers. That's all I have for you today, girl. Bye. Love you.